Hello everyone. Today we are going to be creating the parametric modeling object in your assignment list. So basically what we're looking at here is a rectangle that you're going to learn how to cut away at. You can see the overall shape is a rectangle, and also we're going to learn how to use the hole feature in Autodesk Inventor as well. Okay, so just like everything that you do in class, you are going to start by clicking on a new part in your window. Once that loads up, we always start with 2D sketching, always sketching in 2D, not in 3D. So you want to make sure you click on the big part of the button. Once you've selected Start 2D Sketch, you're then going to pick the axis in which you want to work on. I like working on the XY axis because that's just what you're used to working with when you're graphing. So I'm going to go ahead and select the XY plane, and now I'm ready to 2D sketch. So if we look back at what the actual object looks like, we are going to create a rectangle to start, and then we are going to extrude that rectangle out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use the rectangle tool. There are two different ways I can make a rectangle. The easiest way is by clicking and dragging over. Now, right from here, one of the ways you can dimension your rectangle is by go ahead and typing in the exact amount you want the X and Y to be. I find that this is the easiest way to do it, and the reason that this is the easiest way is because then you don't actually have to go use the dimension tool at the top of the screen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dimension that. Alright, so if you look at the directions, you're going to see that your X is going to be 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 3 inches. I'm going to press the Tab button, and then I'm going to type in 1 inch. When I hit Enter, I have created a 3 by 1 inch rectangle, which is the size of the overall parametric modeling object. Now, because part of my object is off the screen, I can go ahead and use the Viewcube to go get that back. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the front of my Viewcube, and now my object is perfectly centered in the middle of my screen, so I can continue to work. I'm going to go ahead and hit the Escape button on my keyboard, so I no longer have the rectangle tool selected, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Finish Sketch. Now once again, when I finish my sketch, I kind of lose part of my object over here off my screen. So now that I'm in an isometric view, I don't want to be using the front of my cube. I now want to be using the little house button up above it. So I'm going to click on that house button, and I'm going to have that object centered back in the middle of my screen. Now the next part of this is to make this into a 3D object. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Extrude button located over here. I'm going to extrude that out. Now notice mine extruded right away. If yours doesn't, you need to make sure you click on the area that you want to extrude. So mine has extruded out 1 inch, which is exactly what I want it to do. So I have 1 inch written right here. And then I also wanted it to be extruded in direction 1. So everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now I have my object exactly how I want. So the next part is to go ahead and use the color tool. The color tool is located up here. And the color they want us to use, I believe it is a sky blue medium. So I'm going to go down to sky blue medium. I'm going to select sky blue medium, and now my object is colored the correct color. Okay. Now that I have my rectangle, in order to get it to take away part of that part, we need to create another sketch. So I'm going to go back up to the Start 2D Sketch. Now, instead of having the axes that I can select, I'm going to go ahead and click on the part of the object that I want to create a sketch on. Now, if you remember, the angle cuts through this side of my object, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this face of my extruded rectangle. And now I'm back into a sketching mode. You can see over on the side in my browser, I've officially created a second sketch, while my first sketch lives under extrusion 1. Okay, so if I ever have to go back and change anything, which I'll also show you later in this tutorial, sketch 1 is where I can go back and change that. But right now what I need to do is cut away at this object. So I'm going to click on the front again so I get it centered nice and neat for me. And now what I'm going to want to do is create a line that's going to go from the top of my object over to the right side of my object. So I'm going to go ahead and use that line tool located up in the ribbon. I'm going to click anywhere on the top of the object. Now the key is, if you look at my screen right now, it looks as if I'm on that line. However, I am not currently on the line. If I move down a little bit, and hopefully I get the... you're going to see a little icon that pops up next to my x-axis. It is really important that you see that, otherwise you are not drawing the line on the line that you want to be drawing it on. So now that I see that icon, I'm going to click. I'm going to drag down to the other side. I'm going to wait till I see that icon. I still do not. I'm going to go over until I see that come up. Now I see that icon that just appeared. I know I'm on the line. I'm going to click again. Now when I move my mouse away, you'll see it's not trying to draw a line anymore, so I have successfully clicked on those lines. Now that I've created the line, I'm going to click on Escape on my keyboard. That way I'm not trying to draw any more lines. You'll notice in the ribbon it is now gone. And now it is up to me to dimension from this point right here all the way over to this line. According to the directions, we want that to be 0.5. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Dimension tool located on my ribbon. I'm going to go down to my points, and you're going to see how that point shows up. I'm going to click. Then I'm going to go over to the line. I'm going to click again. And when I drag up, it's going to say from that point to that line is currently at 0.68. So I want to change that dimension. So my dimension should be 0.5 inches. I'm going to hit the check mark, and that is change that dimension. Okay. Now down here, I have a different dimension that it's requiring me to put in. It's going to be 0.35. So I'm going to follow the same idea with my dimension tool selected. I'm going to click on the point. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom line. And now when I drag over, I should have that. Now notice that didn't pop up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to escape out of this, and I'm going to try that again. So I'm going to click on the dimension tool again. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on that point. I'm going to click on the line. And there you go. Now it's actually showing up, which is good. And I'm going to put in 0.35 inches. And I'm going to click on that check mark. Okay, now that I have this dimension correctly, I can go ahead to the next step, which is getting rid of this top piece. Okay, so since I'm done sketching, I'm going to finish my sketch. Notice I'm back in my 3D mode, or that isometric mode. I'm going to come over, click on that house again so I get it centered nice and neat. And now I want to get rid of this top part. So I'm going to still extrude it, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to go over to the top. I'm going to click on extrude. Now notice nothing happens because it has two different areas that I could extrude. I have to tell the program which one I want to extrude. So I want to extrude this one. I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now you're noticing that it's coming out this way. That's not what I want to do. I want it to go the other way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this cut tool, which is saying I want to cut away at an object. If you just mouse over it, you should be able to see that it says cut. When I click on that, notice the direction also changed it to direction 2. And now you can see that it's cutting away from that object, which is what my ultimate goal was. So now I can click on OK. Once I'm done clicking OK, that looks pretty good. And so I have the main shape of my object done now. The last part that we need to do is to create the whole feature that's located on the other face. Okay? There's a couple ways we can rotate our object. One is by using the Viewcube. Okay, so if I click on this side right here, I'm going to rotate around and I'm going to get a good view of the side where I'm going to draw my hole. Okay, the other way to do it is by holding the Shift button down, holding the middle scroll button, and then rotating with your mouse. So once you get a little bit better at it, this seems to be the faster way to do it. But until you're really good at doing that technique, I recommend just clicking on this part and you're going to be able to see it just fine. Okay, so here's the face that I'm going to want to be working on. Okay, so now what I'm going to do in order to create a hole, I have to first start a sketch. That's how we start everything in Autodesk Inventor. So I'm going to start a 2D sketch. I'm going to come over to the face I want to create the sketch, and then I'm going to click. Okay, my object's a little turn around. I just like working as how I'm going to view it, so I'm going to actually flip my object here. So this is facing up. If I actually turn the object around, you're going to see that that's the right way up. Okay, and now I need to create a hole here. Now, in a 2D sketch, we don't create the hole, but what we do is create a point on where the hole is going to be centered. So I'm going to click on the point tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click towards the center of my square here. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to dimension that in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and click. And you're going to see the point tool located there now. Now, in order to center this, I know my rectangular square is a 1 by 1 square. So in order to get to the middle, that's going to be 0.5 from the top and then 0.5 from the side. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension that by using the dimension tool. I'm going to start by clicking on the point. I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to click on the top line. And notice it didn't work. This sometimes happens, so I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to hit the dimension tool again. We're going to try that one more time. Going from the point tool to the top of the line. There it worked just fine, so I'm going to click and type in 0.5 inches. Now, it's centered vertically, or up and down. So now I need to center it from left to right. So I'm with the dimension tool selected. I'm going to click on the point. I'm going to click on the side of my square. And now notice it did that again. If I click a second time, it was able to fix that mistake. So I'm going to drag up. I'm going to put 0.5 inches as well. And now my point is perfectly centered. With my point centered, I'm ready to make my hole. And my hole is in my 3D mode. So I'm going to finish my sketch. Now that I'm in 3D, I can create my hole by going over to the hole feature. When I click on hole, it's going to give me a couple of options. Now the hole I want to create, according to the directions, is the hole that's on the top. Okay, this hole is known, this hole is known as a drilled hole. In a couple of lessons following this, you're going to learn about the counter bore. So these are two of the ones that we're going to see quite a bit using Autodesk Inventor. So with the drill hole, what I want to do is I want the hole to be the right size. So that's 0.75. So I'm going to change that to 0.75. Actually, I'm sorry. It is the correct one at 0.25. Oh, 0.5. Sorry about that. So the hole size we're looking at is 0.5 inches. And now the termination is not through all, but it's a certain distance. So notice right now the hole is going through the entire object and out the back. We just want it to go a certain distance. And that distance is going to be 0.75 inches. So I'm going to change that to 0.75. So now I have a hole that has a depth of 0.75. And then the diameter of that is 0.5. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to click on OK. And now I have a hole in my object that's going into my object, but it's not going all the way through. Okay? At this point, I am done creating my object. Now, if I had to make any changes, one of the things you can do is go back to your sketches. So in here with the extrusion, number 2, I have the most recent cutaway in sketch 2. In sketch 1, I have my original shape. And then in my hole, I have the point that I created. I can always go back and change any of those dimensions or any of the shaping in general. So instead of recreating a whole object, I can go back and fix these if I run into any issues. So at this point, you would be turning this in and then moving on to the next assignment.